All right, we're back again with a car that's only seen maybe a couple of appearances. Old 69 Mustang, soon to be Truckstang 3. It's one of the more desired Mustangs out there, the 69 body, especially in the fastback. But don't let appearances fool you. Appearances can be deceiving. This thing's pretty doggone rough. The body panels are, they're somewhat tolerable. I mean, the hood's in good shape. I had replaced that not too long ago. The doors are actually reproduction doors, and that door got dented from a deer impact. But our front fenders, they're a little rough, and these aren't even the original fenders, mind you. The rear quarters and the roof, those are trashed. The roof is actually pretty rough too, distorted and rusty and all that. Trunk lid, meh. Our bumpers actually aftermarket bumpers just as well. But you can see this body is super rough. But the main thing that is rough on this car is the subframes. Both front and rear subframes are crap. They've been patched on and patched on over the years, as we could see with all the booger welded metal, angle iron, flat stock, braces, all kinds of crap welded on here in order to try to patch all this stuff together enough to allow this thing to be able to drive. Even the area where the steering box is at, I had to patch that area after the steering box broke free. I even had the torque box area right here in the front where the leaf springs attach. That completely broke free. I even had our rear shock tower area break free. I had to go up in there and weld the top portion where the shocks bolt up at. I had to weld all that stuff back together in some Mickey Mouse way in order to be able to give this car rear shocks. So this thing's pretty rough. Even the floors had to be patched on. But yeah, you can even see a lot of rot here and here. I even had to do some light patching on the shock towers in the front just as well. But overall, this thing is pretty rough, like I said. The plan, just like with Truckstang 1, is going to be to use a Ranger frame. But unlike Truckstang 1, we're going to actually go the approach that we did with the 51 Chevy, which is going to be to use the bases of the cab, and in this case, the base of the bed, to graft the Mustang body to those members. So we're retaining the original body mounts of the Ranger truck so we can have the best solid mounting of the Mustang body to that frame instead of just welding in random spots and all that. But I had already started hacking this thing up because this thing was actually an accident damaged truck anyway. So there's still a little more I got to hack off here, like the firewall area and most of the bed, save for the actual bottom of the bed. And most of this core support is probably going to get hacked off, and the Mustang core support will be welded to the bottom portion so we can retain those body mounts just as well. But since we are retaining the bed, if one hadn't figured out yet, we're going to be going with the Ute configuration for this car. But I'm going to do something a little bit different on here. The plan is going to actually be to kind of mimic one of those old Novas from the 70s that had a hatchback setup that made it look like the original car, but the whole back would actually open up to reveal the open area in order to use the car as you desire. But even then, I'm still going to do something a little bit different. On our trunk here, I'm going to actually cut along this seam so I could go in line with these quarter extensions, and then this will be welded in place. So this is all going to be one permanent piece right here. And then this section of the trunk lid going up here, as well as the window area, will be made into one hatch, so to speak, but it'll be made to be removable. So if you want to use this thing like a Ute or ride around in the summer or whatever with it open, you could just take that section off and it'll just be open with the truck bed and everything. Or if you don't want to do that, you could put that section on there and lock it down, and then it'll just look like a regular fastback kind of car. But I'm not sure if I'm going to use the glass because the glass is heavy. I might go with Lexan. I just have to see how it goes and maybe kind of figure things out in my head, like I always do with some of these projects, kind of shoot from the hip with it, and it usually works out. But in the meantime, I'm going to have to start stripping this thing down because, well, got to get this body up off the ground in order to be able to start fitting our Ranger body to this thing. So that's what we're going to be doing next. Chop shop time. Got everything gutted out of this thing on the interior, as well as our engine bay. Didn't bother to record the extraction of the powertrain because, well, we've done that enough times that it's pretty redundant. But the engine's still sitting right there. I'll get it moved later. But with everything gone, we can actually see the extent of the rot and rust on this car. Like right here by the fronts of the subframes where the bumper mounts are. That crap's gone. Same thing on the other side. We could also see the patches that I had to do on the subframes on this side. Same thing on the other side. Then the shock towers right here. The right shock tower has extreme welding and patching and everything to even make it solid again. Then you could just see the overall rust around the firewall, as well as these side panels right here. Like, all this crap is just horrible. This is trash. The interior is even better. The floors have extreme rust. Once I pulled the carpet up, I seen just how bad this actually was. And we were really on a clock here because with the extreme rust on the rear floor pans and rust forming on the front floor pans, it would have only been a matter of time before somebody's foot went through one of these floors and either something else broke. But going to the area where the torque boxes used to be, I had to actually add this scrap metal here because the areas were so rusted out that the springs just popped up through the floor on both sides. But I had to weld this stuff in here and then weld it up here as a brace to help hold the front end of the leaf springs down. Surprisingly, this crap actually held up enough that I was able to continue driving this thing for a few more years like this. Then the rear, we could see this is nothing but a mixed match of welded up pieces of sheet metal all over the place right here. Even the fender right here, fender well is all patched up too. All this crap is horrible. And we could even see in the trunk area, the trunk area is nothing but welded up sheet metal and angle iron and other miscellaneous iron welded to make up a bastardized support system of scrap metal. So this is actually pretty ugly. We'll take a walk to the back. This section right here is what I was able to salvage from the rear shock tower member after all this crap rusted away enough that the rear shocks were just popping up through the floor. I was able to recycle this small section that has the holes for the shocks to mount to. So instead of the entire panel just popping up through the floor, it's welded up in place with some angle iron patches and everything to help hold the panel in place so the rear shocks can actually do their job. Didn't do it too well because one shock I pulled off, the stud was actually bent, so this thing was doing some weird distorting and moving around. Again, we were on a clock. Only a matter of time before something else broke on this thing.
That's good.
So anyway, as you could see, this car was pretty well rotted out. So to those that might actually question why I'm actually trying to do a project and hack up a 69 fastback, well, there's not much left of this thing to actually salvage. If one were to actually try to restore this thing, by the time they got through replacing all the sheet metal and structural metal, there wouldn't be nothing left of this car that's original, save for maybe the windows. So we're not really losing a whole lot here by using this chassis in a weird project. We're actually probably giving it a whole new lease on life, just like Truckstang 1, another rotted out fastback Mustang that in good condition nobody would have cut up, but it's nowhere close to being in good condition. So anyway, with that all being said, next move is going to be to start jacking this thing up and getting the suspension components removed. So now we can go ahead and get this thing prepped up so we could get it up on the drums and boards off the ground, so we could start lining up our Ranger chassis and try to get the two members grafted together. All right, I pretty much ripped out everything that needs to come out on this thing in preparation to graft this chassis to the Ranger chassis. And even the strut bars on the suspension on the control arms, I had to cut out the structural members that held those bars because the nuts that hold those bars in place were super rusted and wouldn't even come off with the impact wrench. But I got a head start hacking some of the stuff out by doing that. But speaking of rust, even on the driver's side, it's pretty bad, as you can see from the rot all the way along the top of this panel right here, as well as along the subframe. The spot where the bumper mounted at, gone. The spot in the middle here where the steering box was at, I had to reinforce it with some patch metal so the thing didn't just crumble under its own rot. Even had to put a little patch right there on the firewall with some expanding foam and a piece of sheet metal to close up a hole going into the cab area. So yeah, this thing is pretty rough, but it'll get a new lease in life when we graft this thing to that. And to get started with that, we have our drums in place. Just have to get the boards and then jack this car up in the air high enough to get the boards underneath the chassis so we can set this car up in the air like we done with Truckstang 1 and the other vehicles we done this to. And at that rate, we'll be able to go ahead and get that thing rolled up under here once I hack up the bed, of course. But I'll go ahead and get started with that. Able to get the thing up in the air and get it on the drums and boards, same way we did Truckstang 1. Unfortunately, our engine crane decided to give up on us. The piston's pretty much shot, it won't compress anymore. And with that, luckily the tractor came to the rescue and I was able to quickly and carefully lift the rear end up high enough to get the rear drums and boards in place. So we're all good on that. And with that, we're ready to rock and roll and chop out the belly of this thing in preparation to graft it to that Ranger body over there. But with that all said and done, I'm probably gonna add a couple more boards across both sides to help reinforce all this mess so it'll at least be a little more sturdy. But I'll do that off camera because there's really nothing else left to say or do here. The heavy lifting is done. We took a otherwise complete car and rendered it to an empty shell sitting on a couple of drums and boards. So with that all said and done, I'm gonna leave it off here, and as usual, hit the like button. Likes are free. Subscribe if you hadn't already. Hit the notification button so you can be kept up to date on this thing as well as other projects. And stay tuned because, well, the next time you see this thing, it's going to be a little bit lighter because there's going to be a lot less metal in here. So until the next time, I will catch you later. I am out.